welcome back to episode, what is it, number 3. Yay! Um, Thank you so much for your feedback, and I'm really excited about today's Q&A session because you sent some really awesome questions, and it got me really excited about sewing and nitty-gritty of things, and I took a deep dive in some of the clothes I've sewn, so I hope this will be a fun episode for you as well. But before I get started, I have to share this little tidbit with you. So I took my daughter holiday shopping with my in-laws who are visiting with us. And one of the things she wanted to buy was an oversized hoodie. And I have got to tell you, that was really, really hard for me. And but apparently that's what she wanted. So she bought a hoodie, which was 3 sizes too big for her, and she couldn't understand why this is like so hard for me to wrap my head around. So I explained to her that the reason I started sewing because I wanted my clothes to fit better than what I found in stores, and I hope you'll all agree with me. That's one of the biggest reasons we sew our clothes. So she kind of, she's like, "Mom, take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay." But that was just really hard for me. I wonder if some of you go through similar dilemmas when buying on-trend clothes, which are, they don't conform to our standards of fitting. So anyways, I thought I might share this little tidbit with you before starting with some questions. And I got some good feedback on the needle storage, and some people shared their ideas as well. So I would encourage you to use the comment section and share your tips as well, or post them in Pattern Review as always. Okay, so I forgot to show you my needle storage. So this was a question a member asked, how to store the machine needles, and this is a method which has worked really well for me. So let me show you. I think they sell these as jewelry holders, and this is perfect because everything is in plain sight, and these clear vinyl pockets are great. The depth is perfect for the needles, so I'm sure you can find these, and it's actually double-sided as well. So here's what I use, and I just keep it hanging in my sewing room. Okay, so there was another question about my sewing room cutting table. All of the furniture I have here is from Ikea, as I mentioned in my last episode. And I know that you asked me about the specifics of what I have. I did go to Ikea's website, but because my furniture is over 10 years old, it may not be the same, although I will tell you that if you search for butcher block on Ikea, you will have there are several options which come up. And so this is a solid butcher block, and I measured mine. It's 74 inches long and 40 inches wide. So I hope that helps. And then the cabinets, I think what I'll do is after this, I'll probably measure it and leave it in the description, and see if that helps you find something to work for you. And I had another question. I'm taking notes here just so I don't forget anything. I tend to ramble a little bit. And you asked me about the sweatshirts. The sweatshirt I was wearing. It is a Sew House 7 toaster sweater in view B. So there are 2 views, one with a funnel neck and one with what do we call this? Turtleneck? No. Okay, I'm completely missing it. But the one which is slightly crop length is what I have made several times. Yeah, and we have it on Pattern Review. All right, let's start with this week's questions. Hi Deepika, you're a natural for these videos. Thank you. I'm curious about our community and would love to know more about the geographic distribution and if it is changing over time. So I'm guessing you're asking about where people are logging on from, which countries and regions, and because it is a global community. So I went and looked at our analytics, and it seems that about 60% of people using pattern review are from the United States, and the rest are from all around the world. I haven't checked to see if it has changed over the years, but that would be an interesting data. I should have done that before I filmed this video, but yeah. So, all right, next question. Have you ever dyed fabric, and what is the best dye? I love to dabble in all sorts of things. So the idea of dyeing is very, very interesting to me. I have dyed, but I've only used indigo dyeing method. I have not dyed using the chemical dyes or the stovetop method, although that has not stopped me from buying plain white light colored fabric. And I do have a bunch of kits. I've bought an ice dyeing kit at a sewing expo. I have bought chemical dyes. I even have like 4 or 5 colors of RIT dye, but because my marital peace is important to me, and my husband is always concerned that one of these experiments is going to result in our washer and dryer turning completely a weird color, I have not attempted dyeing fabrics using synthetic dyes. Indigo dyeing was just fantastic. I enjoyed that process. I did it a few summers ago because I took a class a teacher was giving here, teaching dyeing with natural dyes, and indigo dyeing was one of the projects we did. So what I love about indigo is the color saturation and the kind of hues of blues which you get with indigo is kind of hard to replicate with chemical dyes, although, wait for it. Ta-da! I did find a RIT dye which is indigo. And apparently this can dye cotton, wool, nylon, and more. Have I used it? No. So I am definitely not an expert. The indigo dyeing experience was really fun. I did that with my daughter. What we did was, this is one of the experiments we did. And this is just like cotton lycra. And I wanted to see how saturated the color gets if there's polyester mixed in. And I don't have other pieces to show you because I've either used them or actually I've given them away. Linen dyed really, really well. So the way indigo dyeing works is that you make a vat of dye and then you bring it to a certain temperature and it looks green, which is super weird. But the way this fabric takes that indigo color is when you expose the dyed, the soaked fabric to oxygen. And the longer you expose it and then you dip it back and then expose it again, this process of dipping and exposing creates this beautiful hue. And no two fabrics are alike, which to me is pretty amazing. So I hope you give this indigo, oh, I brought this. This is the kit I used, and it comes with pretty much everything you need. So that's what I've done at home. However, if you want to experiment with other dyes we have, I'm gonna put a plug in for one of our classes. It is by Angela Wolf. She, when it comes to experts, she is an expert pretty much in dyeing everything, dyeing and many other things. So check out that class on pattern review. I'll put a link down below in the description box. I think it's called Beginner's Guide to Dyeing Fabric. So, all right. What is the next question? Okay. So this is like a 3-part question you asked and got me really excited. What are the uses of Coverstitch machine? Coverstitch machine and the uses. Okay, So I used to have a standalone cover stitch machine, but I don't anymore. I have a combo, and you probably saw that in my last video when I did the tour. I have the Baby Lock Ovation, which is a combo machine from serger to overlock. No, from overlock is a serger, sorry about that. From serger to a cover stitch machine. Now, the biggest difference between cover stitch and a serger is that serger has a knife, and it is used primarily for finishing the seams. Not to say that you can't use it for other purposes, but that's the primary function. And the primary function of your cover stitch machine is to finish the hems, top stitching the hems. I wish I had. I do not have as much as I love. Oh, actually, I'm with today. All right, so this is one of the knit tops on which I did not use the cover stitch, but you can recognize that from the twin needle in all the sportswear and all of the knit materials. You'll see like a twin needle stitching and sort of something which looks like a zigzag at the back, and it really helps with stretch retention, not to mention the garments look just beautiful. And if you have a cover stitch and a serger, there are many items you can make start to finish without even using a sewing machine. I think one of the other things the cover stitch machine can do is flat locking, although that can be done with a serger as well. But yeah, there are many decorative stitches you can do with a flat lock, and I love to have that professional finish on my knit garments, not to mention the stretch is really nice. Yeah, so while it is not absolutely essential, and you'll see in a minute why when I show you some of the hem finishes, it is really a nice to have. So you make that decision for yourself if you want to invest in one. Then of course I'm going to redirect back to pattern review to read a lot of the reviews on the machines people love. What are some of the best ways to finish a seam? Do you leave it as is? Do you use pinking shears or a French seam? And how to pick the best choice? So my answer to this question is there isn't a best way, like one method fits all kind of solution. I think for you, you have to decide what works for the type of sewing. I usually, for me, if you want to ask how I finish and my garments, I ask myself these 4 questions. First, and the most important one, is how am I going to wash or launder the garment I'm making? If it is going to be thrown into the washing machine and the dryer, then it's obviously going to go through a lot of, and if the fabric is going to unravel, I want a sturdy finished seam. Second, if the type, how is it going to affect the fabric drape or the wearability? For example, if it is a chiffon or a sheer fabric, and it's a light color fabric, if I am going to be seeing the edges from the outside, or if I'm going to be seeing the unfinished seam finishes from the outside, in that case I would probably use a French seam. And the third question is, you're probably gonna laugh, but I'm sure you'll associate with this too. How much time do I have, or how lazy am I feeling? And which is why you kind of saw that I didn't use the cover stitch on my knit top because I was too lazy to thread my cover stitch. So I just used my triple zigzag on my sewing machine, and that's completely fine. I've had this top for like over 6 years, maybe even more. And final question is, can I use this as an opportunity to learn? Now, as much as I am an advocate of making samples, as you know from our Zoom classes from all our teachers, I find it extremely hard to just make samples. So for me, the way I learn is by making a project, even if it is a smaller item. So if there is a garment which you can use to practice your seam finishes, that's what you can, you know, that might answer some of the questions. So what I did was I went into my closet and I got a few tops to show some examples of some of the seam finishes and seam and hem finishes. So let's see. Let's look at the French seam, and this is a double georgette, which is not like completely see-through, but it is a drapey fabric, and I wanted to see if French seams are going to be harder to sew, because this is a very, very drapey fabric. And I'm also going to show you what not to do, keeping it all real. All right, let's turn it wrong side out. Now, the benefit of a French seam is that all of the raw edges are enclosed. So if you wanted to, you could, with clever thinking, make a garment reversible. So this is a seam. This is the French seam. You cannot see any raw edges, which means when it's going to be washed in the washing machine, there's no chance that this will fray, because you know, if a fabric is prone to fraying, here we go. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this. Do you see these little whiskers? The way you do French seam is that you will put two wrong sides together, right? We usually do right sides together, but you will put two wrong sides together. Sew a 1/4 inch seam. Actually, yes. Sew a 1/4 inch seam. Then trim it, and then you trim it, press it, and then bring both the right sides together. And then you sew another 1/4 inch seam. If you don't trim the 1/4 inch seam, that's when you will get the raw edge whiskers, which you just saw. So I'm going to show you what not to do. So that is your French seam. I would use it for linen. I mean, you can probably use it anywhere, but I would definitely use it for fabrics like chiffon, satin, linen, basically things which tend to fray a lot. Okay, now let me show you an example of a seam which I have left raw. Yes, you can do that because there isn't any sewing police. It depends on, this is a silk, this is silk. And on this, I have finished the side seams by just serging them. And one of the qualities of bias, which is 45-degree angle, or, 45-degree is the bias, but any fabric which is on the bias does not fray. That's why you will see the bias tapes without finished edges. Our shoulder seam is on the cross grain, and that also tends to fray a lot less. And because this was a really high quality, tightly woven silk, I actually left this raw because I just didn't feel like it. So there we go. Here's another example, and now I have washed that tank top in the washing machine, I don't know, multiple times. Here's a top I made from Liberty of London silk. This was gifted to me by my best friend who lives in London, and this top is completely on the bias, so technically it will not fray, but I did want to finish the edges, but was really impatient to do the French seams, so I just serged them. And I don't know if I want you to see this. don't know what I have done here. Some of the things have been left raw and others have been finished. So, but yeah, but I did hand sew the binding on this top, which I'm really proud of. So did I hand sew this one? Yes, I did. I almost always try to hand sew the binding because that way I'm sure that I'm catching all of the edges. Okay, so here's another, actually, let me show you this one. I got all my clothes up. Here you go. Here's a linen, this is grain line Pharaoh dress, I think. No, this is actually, I made this from the tunic Bible pattern. Yeah, and I wear this linen dress all the time, and the fabric is from the fabric store in Los Angeles. I don't know if they still have it. All right, so for this dress, I searched the side seams. This is actually my preferred way to finish most of my woven tops and dresses. And I zigzagged. If you don't have a serger, you can always zigzag the edges. So that's what I did. As you can see from most of my garments, I'm sharing with you that I kind of don't follow the pattern and just do my own thing, what feels right. I want to show you another seam which is not talked about enough, is called flat felt seam, and you're going to see this type of seam in seam finish. Yes, seam finish in for some reason only in men's shirts. I went and looked in my closet and see if I could find any of my shirts which are ready to wear. I have like two, but they in the women's clothes, they cut corners, which is so sad. But yeah, this is a ready to wear and this is a serge finish. But then I looked at all my husband's shirts, which are 100% store-bought. And all of his shirts, every single one of them, be it a dress shirt or a casual shirt, every single one of them has a flat felt seam. Look at this. This is the side seam and this is the inside. Every single one of the shirts has this. So the way this works is you sew right sides together and you trim one of the seam allowances and then you wrap the other one. I'm not explaining this. Onto the uncut one, and then you top stitch them. So it's beautifully, it lays flat, it stays beautifully flat, and it looks great from outside and inside. So that's again one of the seam finishes you can use for garments which can be made reversible. I don't have an example of Hong Kong finish in which you wrap both the seam allowances with either contrast bias tape or matching bias tape, which looks really, really gorgeous. I actually made a jacket for my daughter when she was 4 using an Oliver & S pattern, and I used that finish for that jacket, which looked absolutely wonderful. I actually made my own Liberty of London bias binding on linen. Ooh, I'll have to link my review just so you can look at it. Brings back some nice memories. Yeah, so I think that's it. That's the question you have to ask yourself. How are you going to wash the garment? How much time do you have? Is it going to affect how the garment will look? And can I use this as an opportunity to learn and try a new technique? So I hope this helps. Oh, actually, let me go get my book, which I highly recommend. So I don't look at too many books anymore, but this Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Sewing is a book I actually still find myself, and just this page just opened up at neckline finishes, so I'm going to show you. What I love that it's just illustrations and it's explained in depth how to do certain things, and this has a section on different types of seam finishes. I have actually referred to it many times, so I highly recommend this book. Okay, so that was seam finishes. I'm not sure we have time for hem finishes, but I can actually show you a skirt which I'm super proud of. This is an eyelet skirt I made, and this is Sewaholic Hollyburn skirt pattern. And so for this, I wanted to, I didn't want visible stitching because of the eyelet, and I underlined the skirt and I used a hem tape. I don't know if you can see this. Yes, maybe. All right, so this is a hem tape, and I absolutely loved this delicate finish. This is a hem finish. Okay, so that was a lot. Okay. But I think that's all the questions we have. Oh, we have one more. And this is the one which sent me back in the rabbit hole. Hi Deepika, do you think you will plan another PR weekend? I miss seeing friends in person. I miss seeing friends in person too. You have no idea how much. I think part of the reason I'm struggling with my sewing mojo is I come back from these events and seeing friends, and I'm so inspired. For those who don't know, PR Weekend is an event we started doing pretty much since the beginning of Pattern Review. It's a 2.5-day event we host in different cities around the States. We've actually had a few PR weekends in Canada as well. And it's a 2.5-day event, and one day we just fabric shop. And because learning is important to me, we host one day of community building and learning new things. We have speakers, we learn, we sew together, and we have a lot of fun. So the last PR weekend, unfortunately, was back in 2019, and I'm gonna link in the description box highlights from that PR weekend. So until we can meet again in person, which I hope will be next year, perhaps you can relive some of the memories like I did before I filmed this, and it got me really excited, and I felt happy, and it was absolutely a fantastic PR weekend. So I hope to see some of you in person soon, and here's hoping that it will be happening next year when we can celebrate Pattern Review's 21st anniversary. Okay, it is time for announcements. It'll be a quick one because but I posted the winners of our anniversary contest just before filming this, so please go to our blog and check out who won the contest. And if you can, please take the time to read all of the wonderful garments submitted by people and all of the tributes they have sent in for PR, for each other, for all of the indie patterns they learned about from Pattern Review and seeing from each other. It was just absolutely fantastic. And so check out that announcement on the blog, and the holiday contest is still going on if you want to enter that one. And of course, I'm reminding you again to write reviews. There is, I figured that I'll share a little tip about how to get your sewing mojo back, just because it's a question which is on everyone's mind, including my own. One of the things I like doing is displaying my favorite pieces somewhere where they're visible. So let's say I bought a fabric from somewhere and I haven't had the time to sew it. So instead of feeling guilty about it, I will display it, and that'll help me dream up something. This is a fabric I bought from India. It's a kantha. A lot of people refer to it as a kantha quilt, which is because it is 2 layers of fabric, and it is pieced and quilted. But because it's a very lightweight silk, it is gorgeous. It's drapey, and the colors just it's my jam. So I have been really afraid to cut into this, but there is a topic which started on pattern review about sewing with kanta fabric. Oh, it reminded me of that, and I pulled it out. So maybe one of these days I will sew it up. So display those fabrics and your patterns, and hopefully the sewing mojo will come back. And on that note, have a good week, and I will see you next week. Don't forget to send me your questions. Description box will have all of the links for things I talked about in today's episode. Bye.